Before you decide to walk away from your relationship, pause. Because the decision to leave isn't just about frustration or disappointment. It's about legacy, connection, and emotional impact on you and the person you once chose. Hi, I'm Jefferson Fisher, and if you're standing at a crossroads, wondering whether to stay or go, this conversation is for you. In the next few minutes, we'll strip away the noise, look at the real reasons we feel stuck, and ask the questions most people avoid, not to convince you one way or another, but to help you decide with clarity, not chaos. Let's get into it. When a relationship feels heavy, the natural instinct is to look outward, at your partner, at their behavior, at the conflict. But the truth is, before we examine the other person, we have to check in with ourselves. Ask yourself, have I been showing up as the partner I want to be? Am I communicating my needs, or am I expecting them to read my silence? Am I reacting out of frustration or responding with intention? Sometimes we start to drift, not because we've fallen out of love, but because we've fallen out of alignment with ourselves. We let resentment simmer, we stay silent when something hurts, or we become passive participants in a connection that once felt alive. And all of that, it adds up. Checking in with yourself doesn't mean blaming yourself. It means pausing long enough to reflect on your role, your growth, and your emotional state. Because every relationship is a two-way mirror, and how you show up affects what you see. It's easy to point fingers. It's harder to ask, have I voiced my boundaries clearly? Have I honored theirs? Am I responding from past wounds or present truth? These are not easy questions, but they're necessary ones. When we don't do this internal check, we risk making decisions from a place of confusion, anger, or emotional exhaustion. We might walk away not because it's the right move, but because we never gave ourselves the chance to understand what we really need. So before you decide the relationship is broken, ask if you've been showing up whole. Before you say it's not working, ask if you've really tried working on yourself within it. Sometimes the answers we need aren't in the other person's behavior, they're in our own reflection. And sometimes, by checking in with yourself first, you bring a clarity to the relationship that either helps heal it or helps you walk away with peace, not regret. Sometimes the argument you're having isn't really about what you think it is. It might look like you're fighting over the dishes, the tone of a text, or how much time is spent on the phone. But underneath that surface level frustration is something deeper. A need that's gone unmet, a feeling that's been building, a disconnect that hasn't been named. The conflict, in many cases, is not the core issue, it's the symptom. It's the alarm bell your relationship rings when something important isn't being acknowledged. And unless you're willing to pause and look beneath the noise, you'll keep having the same fights in different forms. In healthy relationships, conflict isn't the enemy, it's a messenger. And if you learn to listen closely, it can teach you a lot about yourself, your partner, and the dynamics between you. But when conflict becomes constant, when it feels like every conversation is a landmine, it's a signal that something else is trying to be heard. Maybe it's a lack of emotional safety. Maybe it's unspoken resentment. Maybe it's a need for validation or understanding that neither of you have been able to put into words. It's tempting to focus on who's right and who's wrong in an argument, but that keeps you locked in a cycle of blame and defensiveness. Real growth happens when you shift the question from who's to blame to what is this conflict really about. That shift takes courage, it takes vulnerability, and it takes maturity to admit that sometimes what you're reacting to has less to do with the moment and more to do with what's been building in the background. So before you decide your relationship is broken because of the constant conflict, ask yourself, have we really talked about what's beneath it? Have we created space for honesty, not just about behaviors, but about needs, fears, and emotional realities? When you learn to look under the surface, you stop fighting against each other and start fighting for understanding. And whether the relationship survives or not, you'll walk away having grown, not just from the love, but from the lessons it brought with it. Every relationship goes through hard seasons, moments when things feel distant, strained, or simply off. That's normal. No connection stays in a constant state of harmony. But when you're thinking about ending a relationship, One of the most important questions to ask yourself is this: am I experiencing a temporary phase or am I caught in a destructive pattern? The difference between the two can completely change how you approach your decision. A phase is situational. It's triggered by stress, a life transition, burnout, or maybe even external circumstances like work pressure or a personal loss. During phases like these, communication can slip, patience runs low, intimacy fades, but phases, by definition, pass. With time, effort, and mutual care, the relationship often finds its rhythm again. A pattern, on the other hand, is something you've seen before. Maybe not just once, maybe not even just in this relationship. Patterns show up repeatedly. They follow a cycle. Maybe it's a pattern of emotional shutdown, constant blame, broken boundaries, or unresolved tension that keeps coming back like clockwork. And if you've had the same conversation over and over with no change, it's likely a pattern, not a phase. The challenge is, when you're in the middle of the pain, it's hard to tell which one it is. That's why stepping back matters. Ask yourself, has this issue been around for months, years? Does it reappear no matter how we try to fix it? Or is this a result of something recent, something that might pass with a shift in communication or support? If it's a phase, your relationship may need empathy, patience, and space to breathe. If it's a pattern, it may need boundaries, hard conversations, or even an honest decision about whether you're still growing together or just repeating history. Being able to tell the difference between the two isn't about blame, it's about clarity. It helps you decide whether the connection you're fighting for has the potential to heal, or whether holding on is just another loop in a cycle that's already cost you too much. Not every rough patch is a reason to walk away, but not every repeated wound deserves another chance. The wisdom lies in knowing which is which. When emotions run high, clarity runs low. It's in the heat of frustration, heartbreak, or exhaustion that we often feel most compelled to make a decision, to end it, to walk away, to escape the pain. But here's the truth: permanent decisions should never be made in emotional storms, because when we're overwhelmed, we're not thinking with clarity. We're thinking with defense, fear, or fatigue. In those intense moments, it can feel like the relationship is broken beyond repair, like nothing will ever change. But emotions, no matter how powerful, are temporary. What feels unbearable today may look completely different after a few days of space, rest, or calm reflection. That doesn't mean the pain wasn't real. It just means your perspective was shaped by the moment, not the whole story. When you're emotionally flooded, your brain goes into survival mode. You either want to fix everything immediately or run away from it completely. Neither of those states is a good place to make a final choice. Walking away might feel like relief in the moment, but if it's done out of impulse instead of insight, it can leave behind confusion and regret for both people. Instead, give yourself time to cool off, time to process, time to understand why you feel what you feel, not just react to it. Ask yourself, am I making this decision from a place of clarity, or am I just trying to stop the pain? Because there's a difference between leaving with peace and leaving in chaos. One is rooted in awareness, the other in urgency. Waiting doesn't mean avoiding the issue. It means respecting its weight. It means recognizing that something as important as ending a relationship deserves space, care, and thoughtful consideration. It means not letting a bad hour or even a bad week define the fate of a relationship that once held meaning. So breathe, step back, sit with your emotions, but don't let them make the call for you. Decisions made in emotional storms often lead to deeper wounds. But when you wait for the waters to calm, you give yourself the chance to respond, not react. And sometimes that pause is all it takes to either find your way back or move forward with peace. Before you walk away, before you label the relationship as over, ask yourself one essential question. Have we had the hard conversations yet? Not the arguments, not the passive-aggressive silence, not the vague statements like, I'm just tired or something feels off. I mean the real, honest, vulnerable conversations, the ones that make your voice shake a little, the ones where you actually say what you need, where you actually hear what they're afraid to admit. So many relationships end not because two people didn't love each other, but because they never learned how to speak truthfully to each other. They avoided discomfort, dodged vulnerability, or assumed the other person should just know. But no one can read your silence, and no one grows from guessing games. Hard conversations don't guarantee a happy ending, but they do guarantee clarity. They bring things into the light. They let both people show up fully, flaws, fears, feelings, and all. And that's where real connection either begins again or finally lets go with grace. Ask yourself, have I been honest about what's hurting me? Have I truly listened to what's hurting them? Have we talked about what we both need and whether we're willing to meet in the middle? Or have we just tiptoed around the truth, hoping things would magically fix themselves? These are not easy talks. They take courage. They take maturity. They take the willingness to be uncomfortable, but you owe it to the relationship and to yourself to have them, even if it's just once, even if it's messy, because it's far better to end something with understanding than to carry around unanswered questions for years. And here's the thing. Sometimes one hard conversation changes everything. It opens the door to healing. It reveals a willingness you didn't know existed, or it confirms that it's time to go. Either way, you leave the relationship knowing you didn't run from the truth. You walked toward it. So before you leave, sit down. Open your heart, ask the questions, share the truth. You might be surprised what honesty still has the power to rebuild or release with compassion.